What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Inside the Lines. It's me, Isaac, on a somewhat apologetic edition of Inside the Lines. I have a lot of apologies to make, with the fact that I haven't been able, I've been a little out of commission these past couple of weeks, a little under the weather, but I'm finally back and excited to issue a public apology to a long overdue public apology to the 2024 NBA champion Boston Celtics. So this is my apology video because I definitely had my doubts of them. I think they were reflective in the predictions that I had made, but I definitely had my doubts when it came to whether or not their team would pull it off, even though they had hands down the best constructed roster with the right star power, the right bench pieces, the right role players the entire season. And I wanted to make sure that I gave them their due credit. I wanted to wrap up this season kind of giving them all their due praise while we look ahead to things towards free agency and draft in future videos here. But, I couldn't let another video be made without giving props to the 2024 champion Boston Celtics. So without further ado, let's get into it. So coming into this finals series, it's no secret that I had my doubts about Boston. As I said earlier, I definitely felt as though, you know, Dallas had the advantage. They had the momentum coming in after the series win against Minnesota, the best defensive team in the league. So I kind of rode that high to a degree. I rode their momentum, I rode their rhythm, and felt as though they were going to carry that into the finals. Now with Boston, obviously one of the bigger things in addition to that was the fact that I felt like they hadn't been tested to this point. I felt like it was very much a coasted road to the finals with teams having, various amount of injuries through the entire playoffs, or their opponents, having a various amount of injuries through the entire postseason. So I did, as I showed there in the graphic, I did pick the Mavericks in 7. Obviously the preview video is there, but, I'll go through a little bit as to why. Some of the keys to the series coming in, I felt as though, the close game, late game execution was going to be a factor. The paint battle was going to be a factor. The 3-point shooting, the defense, the coaching battle, the role players, and especially the star players showing up, I thought was going to be the biggest kind of determining factors in determining the outcome of this NBA Finals. And to be quite honest with you, I don't even know if the stars were really all that impressive in this NBA Finals, but nonetheless, I definitely felt like they were definitely going to play a role, of course, into determining the winner of the 2024 Larry O'Brien Trophy. So going forward, I kind of wanted to see what advantages I gave Boston coming into this series. I said that they had the deeper team with more reliable role players, more reliable defensive players, and more experience, more finals experience, more players with finals experience on their roster. As for Dallas, some of the advantages that I gave them coming into the series was having more trust in their ability to close late game scenarios, late game execution. I thought they had a better paint presence. The advantages they have with those lob threats and Gafford and Lively, and the ability to get to the rim with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic and Derrick Jones Jr. Along with the fact that I thought they could shoot the three a lot better than Boston. I feel like they had more star players that had been on this level, although I had my doubts about Kyrie Irving coming into this series. We're definitely going to touch on him. And I also felt like Jason Kidd had, out coached or out dueled coaches with more in this particular playoff run than Joe Mazzulla had, with obviously being able to out talent teams the way he did in the first couple of series, with injuries being a factor. So I definitely gave those advantages to Dallas. So how did everything shake out? Right. Well, obviously we know that the NBA Finals shook out in a very, very quick 5-game series. And in doing so in 5 games, obviously it means that they won 4 games to 1. One game won by a score of 107-89. One game 2 by a score of 105-98. One game 3 took a 3-0 series lead by a score of 106-99, winning that game in Dallas. Dallas was able to take game 4 by a score of 122-84, and then the Celtics took game 5, closed out the series in game 5 in dominating fashion, winning 106-88 with Jaylen Brown, the Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals MVP, capturing his very first Bill Russell Finals MVP as well. So taking a look at the series, you take a look at the stats between these two teams coming in. All the advantages, all the areas where I felt like you take an advantage or you have control, exhibit control in a series. Dallas didn't do too terribly for a team that lost in 5 games, right? Losing, winning the rebounding battle, winning the paint battle, winning the bench point battle as well. So it's like, what exactly happened? Well, to be quite frank, it's that Boston defense. Take a look at the points that Dallas scored per game. They weren't able to shoot the ball effectively well, and that 3-point percentage, shooting almost 32% from three, is not going to cut it. So when I take a look at it from that perspective, I say the Celtics defense was their key to victory, their dominance. It's been their calling card all year. And when I say that, it really is going to exhibit itself in how we're going to examine it a little bit further, specifically as it pertains to a guy like Kyrie Irving. And, we're going to definitely examine a little bit more, take a deeper dive a little bit more into that element. But in addition to that defensive element that Boston had exhibited all year, it's more than just defense, right? You can be a good defensive team and not be as good offensively as we saw with the Cleveland Cavaliers earlier in this postseason. No, it wasn't just the ability to defend, but it was role players, right? They had a deeper team with more reliable role players at their disposal in this series, and I think it definitely showed itself in a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, right? Kristaps Porzingis, he didn't play a whole lot in this series. I think he played 3 games, right? And in those 3 games, they won, obviously. They didn't lose any of them. But take a look at what he did in game 1 specifically. Off the bench, his first game since the first round, he had 20 points off the bench on 8 of 13 shooting from the field, 2 of 4 from 3 with 6 boards and 3 blocks, right? That element, having that as a player that comes off the bench, granted he had been a guy that started most of the season, but having a guy like him to anchor the defense in the middle to the point where Dallas, who had a lot of success in the paint in earlier series, and the games that Kristaps played didn't have as much success because he did a good job patrolling the paint, in addition to the offense that he provided in shooting the three, hitting the mid-range jumpers, being able to have a paint presence for Boston as well. So a guy like Kristaps Porzingis was extremely valuable. Another guy, Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday in the NBA Finals averaged 14.4 points a game off almost 54% shooting from the field, 7 boards and 3.8 assists, and shot 42.1% from three. Right, this is a guy who led the Celtics in scoring in Game 2, had 11 off 11 of 14 shooting, and 3 of 4 from 3, in addition to, the fact that he's guarding Kyrie Irving. He's Kyrie Irving's main defensive matchup, and that's who many in the league consider one of the best, if not the best, perimeter defenders in the NBA, especially at his size. So you take a look at it from having Kristaps Porzingis, from having a guy like Drew Holiday, from having a guy like Derek White as well, who provided a great perimeter defensive presence, made game-winning plays as well, like just an overall very good presence to have from a role player perspective in the entire postseason, but in the finals as well. When we talk about exploitation of star players and star power here in this series, Boston definitely did that because their stars played well. Their main stars in terms of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, starting with Jaylen Brown. The shooting percentages weren't entirely there. He only averaged 20.8 points per game off 44% shooting from the field and 23.5% shooting from the three-point line. But he did lead the Celtics in scoring in Game 1 and had 30 in that Game 3 victory that kind of gave them a commanding control of the series in Game 3. So he had 30 and 8 in that game off 12 of 22 shooting from the field. Right, and so in addition to that, like I said, defending Luka Doncic was, I think, the key determining factor with how well he had played in those first 3 games. And then, you take a look at the resume of defending Luka is why I believe he emerged victorious with that Finals MVP. Jason Tatum, look at his numbers. Jason Tatum averaged 22.2 points per game off 38.8% shooting from the field, 7.8 boards, 7.2 assists. So the assist numbers were a little bit higher than Brown's. the shooting percentages still were a little bit of a struggle for Tatum, like they were for Brown throughout the course of this entire series. But give him credit. In that game 5, he was masterful. 31 points, 8 boards, 11 assists, off 11 of 24 from the field in that closeout game to finish off the Dallas Mavericks in that game 5. So, in as much as both those stars had played well, Dallas's stars, I'm not even going to really pay attention to Luka because I do think Luka gave you what he normally does offensively. Defensively, he was not great. I felt like Boston really did a good job of exploiting him and got Dallas into scenarios that were less than favorable with him being out of position a lot of the time, but he still delivered a great offensive performance through most of the series. He had his struggles throughout the first couple of games, but started to catch fire, I think, a little bit as the series went on. But the guy I want to turn to in terms of who they exploited the most was Kyrie Irving. Now, coming into this series, Kyrie was somebody I had my eye on because, full disclosure, I've been watching his game for a very long time. And the last 3 or 4 seasons, since he left Boston, I believe in 2018, whenever he plays in Boston, he has struggled mightily. I've picked up on that to this degree, and I said I was concerned about it coming into the series, but I thought he'd figure it out. I was wrong. He did not figure it out, right? If you take a look at his final stats, he only averaged 19.8 points per game off 41% shooting from the field, 5 assists, and 27.6% shooting from 3, right? Those stats in themselves are not good. Good splits, good stats at all, right? But juxtapose that to how he played specifically in Boston. 14.3 points per game, 5.7 assists. But look at those shooting percentages there. 34% shooting from the field, 17.6% shooting from 3. Those numbers are eye-opening and jaw-dropping because of the fact when you look at Kyrie, especially the last few years of his career, he's a guy that's very close to 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the line. So seeing how much he struggled in Boston to me is much more of a mental thing because at the end of the day, not only did I see him miss difficult shots, and Kyrie takes a his shot diet is very much a difficult type shot diet in terms of contested looks, floaters, and finishes over bigger defenders. So obviously that element of it is always not lost on me to a degree, but even his open shots, even his open looks, when he was able, to create separation, he still struggled in scoring in those elements as well. So definitely a mental thing with Kyrie when it comes to Boston, and I'm going to keep my eye on going into next year as he continues to play in Boston during the regular season, or maybe they make it to the finals again next year and they do play Boston again. But it's definitely something we need to pay attention to because he can't continue to average these numbers and Dallas have an expectation to win because, like I said, I thought he would overcome it, but he definitely did not. So taking a look at all those things that Boston was able to exploit against Dallas in this entire NBA Finals series, I definitely think they did a good job exploiting their depth and having more reliable role players, being able to have more reliable defensive players that were able to also contribute offensively as well, and more players with finals experience, and as well as exploiting the weaknesses of Dallas's stars, whether that be the mental edge they had over Kyrie Irving, or whether that be Luka not being as sharp as he was defensively, along with exploiting the role players as well. And that, to me, is why they took home the Larry O'Brien trophy this season. But, I wanted to, before we go here, take a look at something else. Like I said, this is very much an apology video to the Boston Celtics for having my doubts about who they were as a team based off, obviously, their 3-0 deficit that they faced last year in the conference finals against an undermanned Miami team, how they looked in the finals against Golden State a couple of years ago as well. But I do want to issue an apology. But before I even do that and issue that public apology, full disclosure, the front office element of the NBA fascinates me so immensely. Like, I love the front office, the general manager element of the NBA. It fascinates me, and it excites me to see the concept of building teams, how GMs and president of basketball association or president of basketball operations go about building out their roster, assessing weaknesses, and taking a step back and trying to fix those weaknesses. So I wanted to take a look at some of the key transactions that Boston had made to put them in position to win this NBA championship. And number one, you got to take a look at acquiring Derek White, right? Derek White, who was acquired in 2022 for Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson, and protected 2022 first round pick with San Antonio. He was key. He provided them with excellent defense. He made winning plays on both sides of the ball. And one of the biggest things to me for Derek White is you take a look at what he did here in this entire postseason run, averaging 16.7 points, 45.2% from the field, 40% from three. That number right there, 40% from three, coming into the 2022 season, Derek White shot 34% from three, and even in that 2022 season, he shot 30% from three total, or a little, I think 31% from three total. So for him to go from 30% from three to 40% from three in the entire postseason run, that to me was one of the big differences. So they got Derek White, who plays defense, in addition to the fact that makes winning plays, he blocks shots, and is an outstanding guy at finishing on the floater, mid-range shots, and knocking down the three-pointer as well. So definitely an acquisition I loved for Boston. There, another guy that they were able to acquire was Kristaps Porzingis, and this was as recent as this year, right? Coming into this season, they acquired Kristaps Porzingis by trading the heart of their team, Marcus Smart, Mike Muscala, Danilo Gallinari, and a 2023 second-round pick in a three-team deal with Memphis and Washington, right? Kristaps Porzingis, like earlier, paint presence in terms of scoring in the paint in the low post area, or high post if you will, and also being able to provide that defense and blocking shots, rebounding the ball at times, and just being a presence for Boston as well. And finally, one of the key pieces, especially with the fact that they didn't have success the last 2 years, but as soon as he arrives, they win a championship, Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday acquired this past offseason as well, traded for Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and a 2024 first-round pick, as well as a 2029 first-round pick. That trade was made with Portland. Drew Holiday, man, coming off that trade from Milwaukee to Portland and being traded from Portland to Boston. Obviously the channel didn't exist at that point in time, but everyone was kind of crowning Milwaukee as champions at that point in time, and I said, no, Drew Holiday going to Boston is a big deal. He provides defense. He provides an offensive presence. He's not great offensively, but he's a pretty good offensive player. He can finish around the rim. He has a good low post presence as well against smaller guards, in addition to the fact that he can knock down the three occasionally as well. But even in this NBA Finals series, let's even take a look at that three-point number there. Drew Holiday shot 42.1% from three. 42.1% from three, which is huge, right? So he shot the three ball well. He defended at a high level. He was able to get his teammates involved in terms of passing the ball, right? He had about 4 assists averaged in this NBA Finals. And to me, was a leader. He was a steady kind of presence to a degree because he had been there before. He is the NBA champion resident NBA champion that this Boston Celtics team had coming into the finals and coming into the season. So a huge acquisition, well done in terms of roster construction for Boston specifically. And I believe a lot of their rotational pieces are under contract still. So they're bringing back a lot of the players that they had within their rotation coming into next year. So I definitely think Boston is one of the better, if not the best. Obviously, they are the best well-constructed team in the NBA. And with that said, I am issuing a public apology to the world champion, the 2024 world champion Boston Celtics. I apologize for doubting you. I still do have my doubts. I'm not even going to lie because of how they came through the East. But at the same time, the East was injured and you play who you have in front of you. So mad props, mad respect, and we'll see if they're able to do it again next season. But that concludes another edition of Inside the Lines. I appreciate you guys taking this time with me. please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Let me know in the comment section below if you think Boston has what it takes to repeat next year, or if you see there being a new champion, as there have been the past 4 years. I believe there has been a different champion every season, 4 or 5 seasons, I believe. But you let me know who you think will be the NBA champion next year in your way too early predictions, if you will. But until then, obviously, I'm going to have some videos covering free agency and the draft on in the next couple of weeks. So, I'll see you guys then. But until next time, we hope you keep it inside the lines.